Welcome to Politely Pushy. I'm your host, as always, Eric Chemi. Eric Chemi. Politely Pushy. I'm Eric Chemi, and this is Politely Pushy. Welcome to Politely Pushy. I'm your host, as always, Eric Chemi. Today, we're joined by Sharon Goldman. And normally, I would say Sharon joins us from Fortune or VentureBeat, having covered AI for many years. But now you're going out on your own. You're the founder of Ground Level AI, and it's very brand new. And so I want to hear all about it because I feel like so many of my journalist friends, they're going out on their own, right? They've got their Substack, they've got their personal brand. They are not part of the big corporate media ecosystem anymore. And I'm seeing it happen more and more where you can get into your own specific reporting and your analysis and control your subscriber relationships directly. So I'm fascinating to hear about the story. I'm fascinated to hear about it. And like, tell me, what are you doing now? How did you get there? And what's the thought process? And thanks for joining the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Eric. It's nice to talk to you again. Where do I begin? Well, this is Ground Level AI. It's less than a week old. I launched last Tuesday. And yeah, I'm doing all the things.
What are the things that you like doing? What are the things you don't like doing? And what are the things that you're surprised that you actually have to do that you didn't think you'd need to do?
Well, I'll sort of wind back and just emphasize that this wasn't something that I was sure that I would do, but it was something that I had been thinking about for at least the last 6 months. I have been covering AI for about 4 years as my daily beat at Fortune, at VentureBeat. I've also been in the journalism business for almost 25 years now. And before VentureBeat, that includes a lot of freelancing. I was a full-time freelancer for about 10 years before I joined VentureBeat and then went to Fortune. And so I've always had that little builder side of me. I feel like that's always something that is hard for me to put aside. And so actually, I had a Substack starting in 2023. And it was just something that I kept on the side. It wasn't something I was really thinking about making my full-time gig. I loved my work at VentureBeat and Fortune. I didn't really see myself changing that, but it was something that I was doing on the side, kind of promoting my Fortune stories or just, some essays, some side thoughts about things that didn't get into my Fortune stories, maybe little pieces of interviews that didn't make it into my pieces. But when I decided that I did want to sort of take this leap, and this was after talking to several of the OGs in the tech Substack world, I knew that it wasn't going to be just the Substack, that this would be kind of a platform, a way for me to do a lot of different things that I like doing. And that includes, on the ground reporting. It includes hosting events. It includes, meeting with people at conferences. And so, it's something that I see as kind of like the middle of a flywheel, as they say in corporate land.
What is the full playbook? You started to allude to it right now. There's events, there's all these things. What do you feel like is the textbook playbook that your friends who have gone this route are telling you need to do? It can't just be Substack, right? It's maybe there's a book involved. Maybe there's some longer form stuff on YouTube. Maybe like, is there a video component? Is it, I've got a podcast with it, the live events, like, some higher level subscription. Okay, the basic subscription is this, but higher level gets you this. There's the Patreon version. There's, I joke with people and I see like, go on OnlyFans. Like OnlyFans can be whatever you want it to be. It can be all technology reporting if you want. So what do you feel like is the playbook that everyone is telling you? You need to do these 5 important things.
I actually think it's not that. That has been one of the most surprising things. When I speak to folks on Substack, or not just Substack, maybe they're using Beehive or another, whatever platform they're looking to use, everyone is doing it differently. I've spoken to many people now, and I'm really impressed at how many different options there are and how people are doing things in their own way, in a way that works for them. I don't think it's true that you can't just have your publication. I definitely know people who are very successful at that, but I also know folks that are really leaning into events, even larger events. I'm seeing people that are really leaning into more intimate kind of gatherings and making that a cornerstone of what they're doing. Of course, there are people who are really heavy on their podcasts and, maybe very highly produced video. So that actually was nice. I liked seeing that there are different possibilities and I could sort of pick and choose what would work for me and my platform and what I see as my target audience. So for me, that is going to include, as the central point, I'm a journalist. And so the Substack newsletter is really the center point and the cornerstone. But I've always wanted to have a podcast. I had done, some short little vodcast episodes on my previous Substack. And so that's something I'm looking to expand on because I love talking to people, obviously, and I'd love to do longer versions of that. I'm also hoping to do I would call myself a little bit of a hostess with the mostest. Like I really do enjoy hosting like smaller, intimate events like dinners or salons. It's something that I've done in other areas of my life, and I think I'm good at it. I'm certainly good on stage. I really enjoy moderating and speaking, so I also hope that will be a part of what I'm doing. But really, I feel like what's nice about what I'm trying to do with ground level AI is that it's really original reporting by a journalist who's been covering AI for many years now, since before ChatGPT, and kind of really being very targeted with that.
I wrote a bunch of questions as you were saying that. So I'm going to start walking through one by one.
Just lead to 10 more questions. Eric.
Yeah, it's one of those things you ask one and then you get 10 more in your head as a result. So how long were you thinking about this? How long was the itch of like, maybe I need to go out on my own?
I really started getting very itchy about it, I would say, in the wintertime, probably about 6 months ago. I wasn't really sure when that would take shape, though. I wasn't in any rush. I really loved my job at Fortune and what I was doing there, but the itch was there, and I started speaking to some other Substackers, just to get a sense of what they were doing and sort of the honest truth about what it's really like, because it's not easy. It's, you really have to play the long game. And then, about 3 months later is when I really decided to go for it. And I gave notice at Fortune and, decided that I would launch last week in mid-June.
And you reference the long game, which is go to one of the questions I had. How long do you give yourself to measure whether it's been a success or not? Because you're not going to get all the business right away. You're not going to get all the subscribers right away. So how much patience, how much rope do you give this startup operation?
I mean, I can't imagine that I would really be able to do a tremendous amount of measuring for another 6 months. I feel like after a year, I could really get a handle on sort of how things are playing with people, whether it's subscribers, whether it's potential sponsors or collaborations. I feel like that's when I'll really know for sure. But I do think in 6 months, I'll have a much better idea. Certainly, I would not say to anyone thinking about this, you're not going to have your sense of things after 1 week. There's a real excitement around any launch, and it's been wonderful and really heart feeling for me to get a lot of support and reach outs right away. But I know that it's a long haul, that I'm playing the long game, and that, I need to show people that my coverage is worth paying for, that it's, worth following, that I'm bringing people what they want to read, and that my voice is something that they want to continue following.
And then why can't you do this at a company? Like, why couldn't you have stayed and done this version of like I'll read from your email, what gets less attention, what's happening in AI infrastructure, security policy, geopolitics and research, what happens when the technology meets the real world. And you said you plan to spend your time, maybe let's flying to DC for a policy hearing, sitting down with a top AI executive, or walking the floor of a data center or robotics factory. But couldn't you do that as part of kind of the traditional media companies?
Absolutely. I mean, and I did do all of that coverage I did at Fortune. If you look at the coverage I was doing a lot of that, and I got a lot of support doing that at Fortune. I traveled to 4 different communities being affected by data centers. I was on the ground reporting from them. Fortune was very supportive of that. But on the other hand, I think what I say to people is that AI has become such a big beat. And at a place like Fortune, they need Fortune style stories in addition to what I just described. They need folks, really covering the latest news and releases from OpenAI and Anthropic. They need, big business profiles. They need all the things that Fortune needs in addition to what I just said. So, I feel like that's part of it, that, I felt like I wanted to be able to narrow my focus onto some of the things that I think are the most important, but don't necessarily jive with a Fortune audience. And then the other thing is that I do consider myself to be at heart a bit of an entrepreneur, a bit of a builder. That has characterized my whole career. I've never been someone who, has been on staff for decades. I have had a lot of experience being independent. So it's not surprising to me or to my husband or to anyone that knows me that I have that itch. And not everyone does. So when you said that a lot of people doing Substack or going independent, I actually don't see that as much. I feel like a lot of people,
several. I know several people,
okay,
but they're so prolific on LinkedIn. They kind of crowd out the rest of the voices. But you're right. As a percentage, it's a very small percentage of people.
Very small because it's very hard. It's not easy. Anyone who thinks it is hasn't done this before. It takes time. It takes tenacity. It takes consistency. And a bit of bravery, I would say. So not everyone's into that. I'm definitely into that. So, I feel like at this stage in my career, I felt like this is the time to give it a try. And, I'm really excited about it. So that I feel like that sets me apart from others who, again, they might like the idea in theory, but maybe it's just not their thing. And I totally understand that as well.
Are you scared?
A little, but that is a good thing for me. I like that. Yeah. I like being a little nervous, a little scared, feeling like, I'm looking to make it happen. I call it finding little eggs for my basket. I got to find some eggs. I like that a lot. That's something that's very energizing to me. I've always been attracted to that. It's just the way someone is.
And how do you feel like you can compete in such a noisy landscape, right? A lot of people are giving away information for free. How do you just compete with like, hey, like this is worth paying for it, and my reporting will be unique enough and valuable enough to want to subscribe to it?
Well, just to be clear, you don't have to subscribe. Right.
Right.
I do offer a free subscription, and there's, you can get all the previews and occasional posts and stuff like that. In
that case, then is it more now you're competing for eyeballs because then the sponsors will want to get those eyeballs?
I guess I don't see it so much as competing. I genuinely don't. I
want to hear the perspective. I'm coming with my dumb questions. I want to hear how you think about it.
I feel like AI is an overwhelming beat. When I started at VentureBeat over 4 years ago, before ChatGPT came out, there were already a bunch of AI reporters, but not remotely as many as there are now. But it's also such an overwhelming beat. And in a way, I feel like the beat is screaming for some narrowing down and sort of focused coverage that sort of goes away from like the daily news cycle of releases and OpenAI and Google. So I feel like there's an opening for someone like me. I'm a journalist that's been at this for a long time. I think people trust my coverage, and the kinds of things I want to focus on, like infrastructure, like security, like enterprise, like policy. These are sometimes not considered to be the sexiest things, but they're also the things that are making big headlines and will have big consequences on government, on companies, on workers, on society. So I feel like the opening is there for me. It's just a matter of delivering.
I agree. I feel like sometimes you read too many day of stories, but you don't make any progress. You don't really get smarter about what's really going on in the world unless you sit down and then you just sit there and you read a book, right? Like, let me just sit here and read 300 in-depth pages about the behind the scenes political negotiations for why this thing happened this way, as opposed to that, one-page article every day that, is very minor, that a year from now it won't matter. But if you can sit down and get the thickness of the depth of the story, that can sit with you for a long time and you can feel like you've been educated about it. So I see what you mean about getting away from that day-to-day news, like the model update that like a year from now, like no one's going to care about. Like it's just not going to matter because that model will be obsolete already.
There's also a lot of connecting the dots between a lot of these things that I feel like I enjoy doing and I've done before, and this gives me more of an opportunity to do that. Just as an example, take what's happening now with Anthropic and Claude Fable and the US government kind of shutting it down and putting export controls on it. That's a AI model story. It's a cybersecurity story. It's an infrastructure story. It's a government policy story. I mean, it's all of the things, but not everyone takes the time or has the experience to connect that all together. And that's something that I do.
Speaking of all that, then, what are you most excited about? Like when you hear about Fable and everything Anthropic's doing and the government stuff and, Mythos and all of these things. And it's like, what do you make sense of that? Or how do you make sense of it? Because sometimes now I feel like it's getting so crazy. I don't know what I'm supposed to think. I don't know what opinion I'm supposed to have. Okay, so the government has a fight with Anthropic. I don't know whose side I'm supposed to be on. That's where I'm getting stuck on a lot of these things.
That's what's interesting too. I think that's what excites me in a way, is not being on any particular side. I don't know if it's like a sides thing.
Right.
Certainly, there are areas where people have very strong opinions one way or the other, but this is something that's happening that's definitely not going away, that we need to understand more. So if I can help sort of connect those dots for people and help people think about the different sides of what's going on, and why it's not a one-sided pancake, I guess. I feel like helping, people be a little less confused is also something that I'm interested in. And also for the industry people who are reading my work, sort of giving some kind of signals about what's happening and what is coming down the pike is really something that they're looking for, because there's so much noise. There's so much hype. There's so much marketing, and by focusing on some of these foundational things that are underneath the hype, cybersecurity, like the infrastructure that's lying underneath these models, how these models actually work and how they actually are impacting enterprise companies and their workers and society generally, legal issues, political issues. I mean, just as an example, like I've done a lot of reporting on the AI data center boom since, last year, before it was even like super in the media. And now there's this tremendous pushback from average people in the US, and that's going to play out this election in November. But I feel like there's not a tremendous amount of coverage on that right now, and it's going to be a big deal.
Do you feel that a lot of your time now will be spent doing these ancillary things where in the past you could focus? I think about getting an article out the door. In the past, it's like you could write it, but there would be editors and a photo editor and an SEO person and a social person and a distribution person. Because I think about, now you need to spend more time with all these great stories, but do you feel like, but now my time's going to be sucked into, I have to also be the editor, and I also have to find the right photo, and I also have to find all the multimedia elements and get it out to the right distribution. Do you feel pressure of the extra admin work will take away from the great thinking and in-depth reporting you want to do?
I don't. I mean, at Fortune, I was so blessed to have some amazing editors. So no, I don't have that. But that's the nature of a Substack. There's a little bit more of a casual voice to it, and a little bit less focused on that kind of like
maybe a couple typos are okay on a Substack.
Yeah, a couple typos are okay. And I'll be transparent and say that AI comes into that for me. AI is not doing my reporting. AI is not doing my writing, but am I using it to help me speed up the process of writing headlines or getting a photo or copy editing and proofreading or creating social media assets? Yes. And that is actually a big part of why I certainly think this has always been possible, but I think for solo creatives in this space, journalists in this space, it helps. It helps a lot.
Right. You've got a team now, a very affordable team.
Very affordable team, Claude, ChatGPT.
Who do you find is the most useful? I do a lot of Gemini. I find that that's been very good for me.
Gemini is also very good.
What's your breakdown of who you're using right now?
I use them all. That's interesting too. I no longer have like a single focus. But I feel like they're equally good. And it's really like having an editor or a proofreader or someone to bounce something off on. Again, this isn't about my writing. This isn't about my reporting. It allows me to do what I love to do. And it sort of supercharges some of the ancillary stuff that, journalists have been using this for some time now. This is probably the oldest part, but just having AI transcribe my interviews was such a game changer. With Otters, the product that I use, what a game changer to my career, something like that, to have real-time transcribing. It's just amped everything up for me.
Right. And that's something that it doesn't feel like there's a loss there. That's like a win-win. Like, okay, like was someone just going to hand transcribe? You know what I mean? Like when I think about job losses from AI.
I did used to hire people though. Back in the day, I hired people to transcribe. It took much longer. And then I started using some of the early AI transcriptions. It wasn't in real time and it wasn't as accurate. It's gotten so much better. So, these tools do get better and you can choose how to work with them in a way that works for you.
What are a couple of stories? Here we are at the end of June, but by the end of the year, you really want to have a couple of real touchstone stories out there.
Well, I would say that what I just mentioned around the election, I do think that issues around AI, particularly data centers, it's going to be a big, big focus during the election, in local and state elections and even national elections. So if I can really take some time to dig into that and get down to DC a few times, that would be amazing. I am going to be continuing my focus on the data center work, the articles that I wrote for Fortune around communities that have been impacted and sort of the pushback there. The other side of that is that there's really become a lot of conspiracy theories around data centers that I think is fascinating. It's kind of crazy out there right now. So taking that other side.
Tell me some. Let me hear some for our audience in case they haven't heard them all.
That they're population control facilities, they're surveillance centers, that
there might be surveillance centers, like if there's enough AI in there,
that data center developers are building mega AI data centers on farms so that people don't have enough food, that there's radiation being emitted, that's 5G, 6G, all that kind of stuff. Really, really wild things.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because you can make an argument. I know I'm just thinking where does that come from? But you could say, well, the government might use data centers for surveillance. So you could see that argument. You could say, well, land that would have been used for farm. Like it's funny. Like I can see I can see why people might think that, because there's enough tenuous relationships there that like, well, the land could have been a farm, or it might have been a farm, but now it's not a farm. Now it's this instead.
Well, I think it's like that with any conspiracy theory that, there are pieces of it that, and certainly, my point in a lot of my articles that I've written is that, the lack of transparency around how these are built and presented to these communities leads to a lot of distrust. And so distrust can kind of feed these conspiracy theories.
Yeah. What else is there before we go? What else what's most exciting for you? Because you have a smile on your face, you feel optimistic. I'm glad that people like you exist, because I think I'd be petrified to go out on my own and do something like this. So you can see from the kind of questions I'm asking, like, how did you make this decision and why and what's going on in your head? But I can see that there is a personality type that wants to go out on their own and be entrepreneurial and set their own rules and control, like, here's what I'm going to do and here's how I'm going to do it. So I'm inspired by your optimism about going forward on all this.
Well, I definitely feel like it wouldn't be for everybody. It wouldn't be for everybody at every age or stage in their career. Right. I feel like for me, it's good timing, both in my life as well as far as the beat I'm on and where I'm at with that. I feel like I have enough experience and my source list is deep enough to take me where I need to go here. And I'm really excited. I feel like there are a lot of stories that I want to follow up on and focus on and expand on. And I feel like this gives me and people that I want to talk to and have on my podcast. I feel like this gives me the opportunity to do things that I was already doing them at Fortune and at VentureBeat. And I'm so grateful for those opportunities. I hope to continue contributing to Fortune, but that I'll be able to put to another use here and another direction.
You said a couple things that stand out. You hope you continue to contribute to Fortune. So are there opportunities where you still feel like, hey, I'll do some freelance work for some other outlets like that? Yes,
absolutely. Absolutely.
And you talk about your beat in particular. And I wonder if there is a unique opportunity, because that the AI beat, like compared to where it was 5 or 10 years ago, is taking over the world. And there's all these niches and nuances within there, versus if someone was on a very basic beat, right? Or like, there's not a lot of attention. Like, I've spent 30 years focused on this thing that maybe people don't care that much about right now. And if you go on your own on that, maybe that's not as safe of a move.
Well, it's interesting. You could argue that both ways, because sometimes if you're on a really niche beat that has a really niche audience, they're going to be very supportive, and there's real opportunity there too.
Yeah.
Here, in a way, you could say it's a little more risky because AI is such a vast beat and there's so many people on it. For example, everyone at Fortune is essentially covering AI because AI is part of every beat now, in a way.
Right.
But I do feel here that I'm trying to take both of those things, that I'm trying to narrow my focus into some AI sub beats, you could say, that I am very interested in and that I think are really important and have a lot of potential readership and interest, and see where that takes me.
By the way, I think about Fortune, wasn't there that big Wall Street Journal piece about like using AI in the newsroom? Wasn't that just like a couple months ago? What was the response like to be someone in the newsroom there?
I mean, I think it was not really part of my work. Like the tech team was kind of separate from that. And that was also pretty unique to Nick. That's what he was hired to do. So the Wall Street Journal article was really focused on him and his work. It wasn't really something that was trickled down or applicable to the rest of the staff. So,
Yeah, I remember there's a little bit of a couple day news cycle on that one where people are like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And this guy's cranking out all these articles using AI. And I was just curious from the newsroom perspective, what that was like being inside there, if it, just by conversation, by osmosis, just hearing different things.
I think I kind of just shrugged because, again, that's like one way of doing it. And Nick gets a lot of traffic that way. And that's something that Fortune still needs. And it's something that a lot of publications need. So you can't deny that. And if there's a way to do that in a way that works and for the publication and its mission, then I think that's great. I feel like for the work I was doing at Fortune and that our tech team was doing, it doesn't work that way. And it's certainly not how I work. It doesn't work for my reporting and my process at all. Like I use AI, but I don't use AI in that same way. In a way, I feel like that's kind of a journey that all journalists have been on, sort of how am I going to use these tools in a way that works for me, for the type of reporting that I'm doing, the type of journalism I'm doing, the type of publication that I'm at. That's an ongoing conversation that I've been having with people since ChatGPT came out almost 4 years ago. So that's just kind of ongoing.
So tell us, as we go here, tell us all the places that we can find you, every platform and then the name, the website, like how do we find you?
So it's called Ground Level AI. And if you go to Substack and put in Ground Level AI, you'll find it. If you Google it, you'll find it. It's groundlevel-ai.com. You can reach me at Sharon at groundlevel-ai.com. Sharon Goldman is on LinkedIn and Twitter and Blue Sky and Threads and all the things.
You're everywhere. Ground Level AI, Sharon Goldman. That'll be easy to find. So this is great. I'm excited to see everything that you can do. And then the last thing then is, as you're in this role now, how does your relationship change, or how do you want it to change when you're dealing with the PR companies and the tech firms that want to get their message to you about how they're doing business and what they're working on? How does it change now that you're not doing the Fortune job, let's say, and you're focusing more on this, what you want from them, what you don't want from them in terms of a win-win that helps you, helps them?
I mean, some things haven't changed. I'm probably going to be just as overwhelmed, if not more so. So, my response level or times might not change that much. I will say I'm not going to be doing product stuff, like product release type stuff. So, and I'm really going to be doing very little embargoes. So that type of thing is just kind of off my radar now because I'm focused more on original reporting. But, I'm always looking for the right leaders to talk to, the right founders to speak with, the right investors. I'm really the right conferences to go to. So I'm really out there. And so I'm available to talk to on that level and see what works. So I feel like, I am excited to continue working with all my PR contacts and folks that reach out to me. I'm a one-man band, so that makes it a little harder, but I'll do the best I can.
I'm excited to see how quickly your inbox just blows up to the point that you wake up and
it's already,
like 300 pitches, even in a week.
Yes. Oh, really? Yes, not as much as it was at Fortune yet, but it will be. So
it's getting there. It's getting there soon. Sharon, thanks so much for the time. Good luck with this. I'm glad you're able to carve out a half an hour with us and tell us what you're doing and how you're doing it. This is going to be fun to watch to see how this grows over the next few months here.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Eric. Appreciate you inviting me.
Thank you to my guest, and thanks for listening. Subscribe to get the latest episodes each week, and we'll see you next time.